Last time, Swak Wictus reached level 60 after suffering through hundreds of hours in Azeroth. Today, we're gonna showcase the WoW Classic Endgame content and review it along with the rest of the game to provide the world with a non-biased, no nostalgia goggles review from a new player's perspective. But before we do, it's time for a recap, because it's been a long time and a lot has happened. After reaching max level, I lost interest in both questing, dungeons, gold farming, and metagaming. In fact, realizing that I'd been fulfilling a several month-long positive reinforcement loop of maximizing macro efficiency and structuring my entire behavioral pattern around dedicating several hours a day to World of Warcraft really took the wind out of my sails. I realized that this game rewards time over effort. It's tedious in nature much more so than it is difficult, and overcoming difficulty is what makes me feel accomplished. Slugging through tedium numbs my mind. In layman's terms, I was tired of doing repetitive shit in this boring game. So for my final pilgrimage, I set out to explore the last few uncharted territories in Azeroth that I had yet to venture through on my journey. I'll be using said pilgrimage to enlighten you. If you thought reaching 60 was the big reveal, you were fooled by the small reveal. I'm gonna start my last World of Warcraft video by revealing the best kept secret in all of Azeroth. 400 hours of standing, hitting, and occasionally jumping. 2.5 weeks of conscious human existence. Depending on who you ask, that on its own is quite a feat. Spending it in a 15-year-old MMO leveling a warrior? Now that's just masochistic. When I started playing, I was under the impression that it was a world of Warcraft. I've come to find that it's primarily about the war. The crafting is rather secondary. Blizzard built this massive world and filled it with all these fantasy races. They made players spend hundreds of hours becoming emotionally attached to each of their respective characters, then instigated one giant race war and let the pitfalls of the human condition do the rest. Even I have to admit, it's goddamn beautiful. The degeneracy is unmatched, and this game is a hub for all the best people living out their worst lives. Except me. I'm the worst person living out my best life. I managed to hold on to an incredible secret for half a fucking year just for this very moment. I told you, you're not ready for this. Soldier, if you're standing up, I'm gonna need you to sit down. You're gonna have to take a seat on this one. If you're prone to epileptic seizures or heart palpitations, then I suggest you take your delicate sensibilities to a more casual viewing experience. This is your last chance, because I'm about to take it to the next level. I'm not here to fuck around! Have I not made that abundantly clear? This is go mode. I'm thorough, unrelenting, and word on the street is I'm downright meticulous. You think I'd just leave the series hanging without a conclusive ending? Fuck! Steve.
Yeah?
I'm gonna start ranting. You ramp up the music over the next minute.
Sure, John. God, I'm loving this unpaid internship.
You speak when spoken to! I'm gonna be frank with all of you. I detest the World of Warcraft endgame. Once I reached 60, I naturally started doing the raids. An experience I'll articulate later in the video. I was intensely disappointed to find that the reward for dumping a couple hundred hours of my life on this game is getting to do the same thing over and over again until you get lucky, but without dopamine points. Essentially farming for bisque gear and doing monotonous repetitive shit. A lot of people suggest just making another character, but wisdom is knowing that to be the point of no return. If you make another character, you just turned WoW into an infinity game. No, I don't want to fuck around in AV several hours a day to get my honor rank up. No, I don't want to farm the same boss for hours in hopes that I'll win the role on a 5% drop. No, I don't want to find a guild that raids in a time frame that suits my weekly schedule. No, I don't want to do the Valentine's event and collect all these cards. No, I'm not excited to have a 1% more crit chance. And no, I don't want to wait half a year for Blizzard to release an hour's worth of content. And no, I don't want to deal with the ramifications of not talking to my WoW GF for months. Besides, this is what happened when I called her.
Yo, you really fucked up. You really fucked up big time, man. There's some bitch from Snapchat. You're fucked up, man. I'm
No
sorry.
way.
I fucking played you.
No fucking
I
way.
got you! I got you! You fucked up! I got you!
Just kidding. That's a random dude. I actually haven't spoken to Amiri in months. I'm pretty sure Larry, the actual boomer, stole my girlfriend. But you know, it is what it is. I'm not good with MMOE relationships. I'll have to settle for real women. But enough about my emotional compromise. Here's the big reveal. I'm about to eclipse every single great feat on my journey. Had I just scammed a dying guild into farming my Whirlwind X? Already then had I established infamy. Had I stuck to just doing the boat skip? Already then would I have been a legend of Azeroth. Now, whilst the impulsive nature brought forth by the human condition is to blame for the death rolling epidemic, I single-handedly popularized WoW gambling to a point where it's infected every major city on every single server, including RP and PvE servers. That's an actual menace to society. I certainly feel like I've left my mark. Truthfully, genuinely, I could have just stopped there. Most men would be satisfied with that. But I'm not done. We could talk about how I made one of the most popular WoW series in the world. But enough narcissistic, self-congratulatory patting on the back. Here's my magnum opus. Half a year ago, I set out to do one thing and one thing only. Play World of Warcraft Classic to a point where I'd have fair grounds on which to review the game. Yet all I needed was but a mere glance at this game to accurately assess it. I played for half a year just to string you up, just to make you think I needed that much time to understand this boring ass game. Pay close attention. As of today, I'm the World of Warcraft accurate review any % speedrun world record holder. It was there all along. You were simply too blind to see it. From the very character selection screen, I reviewed the game. None of you fuckers caught on. When my conscious existence runs its course, this is what I leave behind. My dream, my legacy. I'm quick on my feet, vicious, nimble, and fucking tired of repeating myself. I'm the goddamn king! I run this shit! No more games. This is where I ascend. This is where I conquer. This is where I fucking rise! So now that we have my entirely arbitrary rating out the way, it's time to highlight the WoW endgame content. Seeing as I no longer design every minute of every day around gaining experience points, what else is there to do? Well, this is where the crafting comes into the picture. You see, to achieve the highest level of war, you essentially need to farm ridiculous amounts of gold. And I'd say the majority of time sunk into WoW past 60 is spent acquiring money. That is, if you're using traditional methods. Personally, I'm more into the war than the crafting, so I use my own patented infinite value gold farming method. First, you need a big crowd of people. The middle of Stormwind around the Nixie buff time is perfectly appropriate. Then, you need to find an individual who's willing to death roll you. Assess the depth of your wallet, then agree to roll him for 100 gold. If you lose the roll, confess that you don't possess that kind of money. If you win the roll, it's a 50-50 on whether he's also a scammer. Then you rinse and repeat till you're wealthy. At peak server times, this yields profit faster than the most efficient gold farming methods in the game. Chinese gold farmers hate him.
朋友是一个坚韧不拔的纪录片。
Blizzard doesn't ban people for convincing others to trade them gold, and most guilds have taken the stance that if you're dumb enough to get scammed, it's your own fault. So the only conceivable repercussion would be a negative reputation. But, seeing as most people that play WoW are degenerates, most of them will actually think highly of you for being smart enough to capitalize on a lukewarm IQ. You need to sort out your finances and establish a profitable economy, because if you don't, you won't be able to afford doing all the raids. As soon as I hit 60, I jumped headfirst into Onyxia and Molten Core. At the time, Blackwing Lair had yet to come out, and Prevenge raided Mondays and Thursdays, which just so happens to be the 2 weekday evenings where I'm not available because I'm busy being choked by old men at Jiu-Jitsu. So for my first 2 raiding experiences, I partook as a guest in another guild. The loot you're able to attain while doing pugs with other guilds is laughable. You're at the bottom of the food chain, and if they spare you anything, it's likely because they would have vendored or disenchanted the item otherwise. I did a full clear of Molten Core, then raided Onyxia's lair twice, and I have 2 items to show for it. I won the roll on the Dragon's Blood Cape, which is an 18% drop chance from Ragnaros, and this relatively useless trinket that this fine gentleman snatched up for yours truly. That's the content creator experience paying its dues. Although these aren't fantastic items, at least one of them is my first purple item that I've actually gotten with my own 2 hands. Now that was a hefty handful hours of my life that I spent for barely any progress. As a stark contrast, this is what it was like to do one single MC raid with my guild. And that was but one single raid with Prevenge. We also ran Onyxia on the same night where I masterfully won a 1 in 40 raid roll for a juicy Onyxia backpack. Needless to say, raiding with your guild is without a doubt one of the best parts of the WoW Classic endgame. With that being said, joining a Molten Core raid when your guild has headed down to a fucking science for half a year isn't in any way challenging. You basically just do what the raid leader says. I've been at this for hundreds of hours and I want to get to the difficult part of the game. In my case, that meant waiting patiently till Blackwing Lair was released along with Phase 3, which chronologically is over a month in the future from what you just saw. What scheming did I get up to in the meantime? I had a few loose ends to tie up. You see, I once promised myself that once I reached level 60, I would return to Stranglethorn Vale with an army of high-level players armed to the teeth. So I had to make a decision. Do I want 1 million views on YouTube, or do I want to say one word that the algorithm doesn't like? Staying true to my beliefs, I started advertising for my first unholy act of World of Warcraft genocide. Little by little, the word started spreading and my army began growing. We started with but a few men showing mild interest. Yet not long thereafter, a fucking platoon of soldiers saluted me as the Messiah, the savior who would cleanse Azeroth. When a measly level 27 gnome approached me with a humble request to be used as cannon fodder for the battle, I asked him if he was ready for the genocide. He said, "I am the genocide." When I stood side by side with kings like Compound or my guilty Skankin' Pig, absolute carnal primates of the Alliance, I knew I would seize the day. I had one spot left for one special person. And I know what you're all thinking. Larry, Emiri. But no, Larry was raiding, and women require attention. The last spot was for a business partner. Due to a misunderstanding, doing business with me was not a pleasure for him. Stranglethorn Vale was empty, absolutely desolate. We found like 3 horde players, and I'm pretty sure I could have killed them on my own. This wasn't up to par. In fact, it was entirely unsatisfactory. You know I wouldn't let this pathetic showing be our conquest. The crusade must go on. And on it went. You see, in WoW, many players are invested in their honor rank. The vast majority of players take great pride in having a lifetime 0 dishonorable kills. If you were to be in a raid party where someone offed one single civilian, every single person in that group would have a permanent stain on their previously beautiful stat page. So anyways, I decided to lead us into the Grumgull base camp. I wasn't aware that whenever a Horde NPC sees an Alliance player attack a Horde player, inexplicably, there will manifest 1 guard for each player in that person's party. In this case, about 40. In the midst of this unbridled chaos, someone did the unthinkable and gave everyone a dishonorable kill. After 370 hours in Azeroth, my perfect honor page was defiled. If you count my fellow warriors, literally several thousand hours of hard work carefully avoiding civilians was all ruined in one fell swoop. That was the point of no return. Future historians would refer to this as the incident, for it was the catalyst that made me snap and send our battalion over the edge. This is the moment in time where we went all sides of the spectrum ballistically rampant. I led the charge onto the Zeppelin. I knew many comrades would be lost along the way, but you gotta crack a few gnomes to make an Orgrimmar raid. By the way, this was my first time ever leading a raid party, and I'll have you know that it is absolutely power in the wrong hands. Endgame WoW players basically have it hard-coded into their brains to do whatever the raid leader says, and here's a nugget of wisdom. Low to medium power corrupts. That's why Discord mods, raid leaders, and Minecraft server owners are the scum of the earth. But I digress. When arriving at Tirisfal Glades, I told my legion, cross into the other airship or you will die alone, which is actually rather mild compared to the language your average raid leader would use if someone made the slightest mistake. So we crossed into the opposite blimp with pure conviction. Any Horde player dumb enough to fight us on the airship got a 2-way ticket to the Death Realm. After cleaning up the public transit, we sailed the skies towards our destiny. The capital of the Horde, the heart of the beast, Orgrimmar. As soon as we arrived in Durotar, our unit got split up when a few of us jumped off to kill an orc. Within minutes, our entire raid party got systematically picked apart and ruthlessly destroyed in one of the most savage wipes I've ever been at the receiving end of. The Horde would go on to camp our corpses, and we didn't even make it close to Orgrimmar. At this point in time, we didn't run away. We merely fooled our enemies with a temporary tactical retreat. The army of Swagwictus does not flinch, does not stutter, and does not give up. We relocate to Booty Bay and bolster the ranks once more. You could smell the bloodlust in the air. Once we filled out the raid group, we conjured the perfect plan of attack. We take the boat to Ratchet, and by that, I mean, we miss the boat to Ratchet, only to await the next boat, which should arrive within a reasonable time frame. And by reasonable time frame, I mean So we wait patiently for a full 5 minutes, after which we clearly demonstrated to Gingra the Orc that she was on the wrong side of history. Even though 40 people attacked her, the Booty Bay Bruisers exclusively target yours truly. I immediately get knocked off the boat and watch my army sail off without me. After embarrassingly having to be summoned by a warlock, I resume command of the incursion. From Ratchet through the Barrens, opting not to go for a frontal assault. This time, we headed for the South Fury River, the Anal Canal of Orgrimmar, the back door if you will. We all knew what was about to transpire. Every lost roll, every honor page defiled, all our emotional detriment. We'd finally get a release for the primal hatred we bury deep within. There's a time for cringy roleplay. There's a time to farm materials. And there's a time to do the crafting. But it is not this day. On this day, we wage war. When I first saw action, I froze in terror and ran around like a headless chicken. But you don't get it, man. You weren't there. We didn't come with honor. We came with dishonor. We came for everything. The Horde, their bank NPCs, their vendors, their quest givers, the civilian casualties were flying left and right. If you look at any of these ruthless warrior stat pages, you will see a battle scar of dishonorable kills. Like a well-oiled machine, our battalion moves through the death dimension, and all simultaneously res inside the bank and rob it. Now whilst we can't rob the money, we can rob the bank of its employees, and steal the time of day from its customers, as we force them through a tedious walk in the death realm. I realized in the midst of battle that I had finally arrived. The World of Warcraft intro tutorial rounds out at just about a couple hundred hours of playtime. That's when you've got a good grasp on the basics of this very complicated game. At this very juncture, you get to begin playing World of Warcraft. Look what you can accomplish with one man, 5 accounts, and a multi-box program when he puts his money where his mouth is. Sapper charges on all 5 accounts with a macro set up to instantly decimate any fool dumb enough to attack him, absolutely smiting any Horde player with PvP turned on. In mind you, a ludicrous vicinity. That's what I'm talking about, that's a goddamn warrior! After 3 dishonorable acts of unholy aggression, we set our sights on Thunder Bluff and began the march through foreign lands. You'll notice half my armor's broke and I have a res sickness, but that comes with the territory. We rode through the Barrens, down the Gold Road and past Ratchet, went west at Camp Tawaro, and traversed through the giant thorn-filled fields of Agamagor. After passing the Vanas Gaming Bristleback Boar Settlement, we scaled this hill in the southern Barrens to enter Malgor, the final zone in the game I had yet to step foot in. I can finally fill out the entire map of Azeroth. Goddamn beautiful. In Malgor, we make a pit stop for buffs and celebrate our thus far righteous conquest to our best ability in this online nightmare RP hellscape as a final ode to the intensely worrying roleplay elements of WoW.
Go forth to victory.
We got E-smashed at 11 PM on a Tuesday, gathered our troops, and went on our final assault, the raid on Thunder Bluff. That's for the countless hours I've spent corpse walking. That's for all my time leveling in Ashenvale. This is for every psychopath rogue player who was severely neglected by their respective parental figures. I told you I wouldn't take it lying down. You think I'd just forget the countless hours of cringy roleplay I had to endure just to get a dungeon room at 4 a.m.? Do you know who I am? And do you know what it takes to reverse the psychoactive effects of scoliosis? I didn't do several hour-long escort missions to become docile and agreeable. I went through hell so I could get revenge. And when you think about it, it's pretty ironic that we managed to kill maybe one player for each 5 civilians. That's a really bad ratio. It's awful. And with my dying breath, I said, "Alright, round 2. We made an attempt on Karen Bloodhoof's life. Any soldier in our squadron who had dreamt of a glorious death in battle got the opportunity of a lifetime, which in their case wasn't very long. Now we may have won the battle on the bridge, but that was cause we were fighting one single NPC. The real battle? After this dirty shaman ratted us out, we were outnumbered 10-1. It was an entirely brutal slaughter, and I question why these brave men chose to follow me. In a last-ditch effort, a paladin saved me with divine intervention, another stroke of brilliant game design by Blizzard. A whopping 3-minute crowd control effect you can cast on an ally that leaves them entirely unable to perform any action but also makes them completely invulnerable. There I stood, with an ever-growing mob of relentless animals watering at the mouth, knowing that in mere minutes they'd be able to have their way with me.
You have beautiful skin.
Taurens, orcs, liches, trolls, checks, ghouls, goblins, you name it. Within a relative time frame, they'd all be able to swak the wick, which would be a terrible fate for a gentle night elf. That is, if it wasn't something we're all just pretending in a video game. Once it hit me that I was in a forced state of divine interracial LARPing, I realized that I was in the very worst aspect of the game. Not the war, nor the crafting. I was currently experiencing the world, and this particular part of the world is ruthless and unforgiving. Perhaps it was always my fate to be teabagged by an orc after undergoing a forced session of divine interracial LARPing. I've come to accept this as my fate, my destiny. For it is not where we end up that molds us, but rather what we do that defines us. Fast forward to 3 days later, and I'm with my guild officer Mitsuha doing the attunement for Blackwing Lair. That meant completing Upper Blackrock Spire in its entirety, which at this stage of progression is a cumbersome annoyance. When we killed Gith, it dropped the Chromatic Carapace, arguably a once-in-a-lifetime, absolutely insane drop. If you weren't to turn it into the breastplate of chromatic flight, you would undoubtedly have a crowning achievement on your character. Of course, the instant I found out I'd have to farm materials to make the breastplate, I passed on the roll immediately and never looked back. I'm not here to fuck around. I don't have space in my inventory, and I'm not gonna farm mats. It's kill mode, not playtime happy hour. We killed General Dracasath, and I doused the Orb of Ascension with my primal lustful essence. Thus, I was attuned to do Blackwing Lair. On Tuesday, the 18th of February 2020, I was stood in a hallway outside Dire Mall North, patiently waiting in a line with my guildmates so I could get a handful of buffs. Only 5 people can enter the dungeon at one given time, and due to us all missing the Onyxia buff earlier in the day, this would have to cut it. When it came my turn, I realized we were gonna have a problem here. Our raid was already intensely delayed, and it dawned on me that I didn't know the way. At all. Not even a little bit. I waited in silence for a few minutes till Mage Tom came through, and he had absolutely no idea which way to go either. So we waited in shame till Moggerfogger came along, and he also had absolutely no idea where to go. That's when I took a leap of faith, downed a Noggenfogger elixir, and tried to find my way to wherever these buffs may be. This was the monumental point in time where World of Warcraft reached an adequate difficulty. I had to be quick on my feet. Don't aggro the dogs. Use my last invisibility potion to maneuver past these mobs. Gnomish cloaking device for the next pack. Admittedly, I had no idea where I was going or what I was doing, so it's a good thing Farnar came through to lead the way. Now you may be thinking, damn, that's a lot of time and effort for some buffs that will disappear if you were to die one single time in the raid. But you have to understand, I came here to ninja loot the Tarnished Elven Ring. The buffs are complementary. I get summoned to Stormwind, and we begin our conquest of Blackwing Lair. There's a few things you have to understand. My guild has at this point never cleared Blackwing Lair. The only way I got into the raid was by lying through my teeth, claiming I had all the consumables, which would cost hundreds of gold, and claiming that I'd read several comprehensive guides on the mechanics. My guild officer said he'd let me record the raid if I didn't show any of the wipes. I told him, I won't show any of the wipes. On the very first pull, we immediately wiped, causing everyone to lose their buffs. A solid 2 hours of preparation out the window, but that gave everyone a great opportunity to improve at World of Warcraft. You see, the extremely complicated mechanics of the fight was walking up to him and attacking until I had 6 stacks of Fire Moss Flame, then walking behind a wall till they disappear. Now that's a lot to take in, that's very hard to keep track of, so it's a natural mistake for even a higher intellect such as myself to stand on the wrong side and get absolutely eradicated in an instant. After 3 warm-up rounds, we finally slay the dragon and move deeper into the lair. When reaching the next boss, it struck me that no matter which path you walk in WoW, they all lead to the same destination, which is a never-ending homicide on dragons of color. I'll admit I haven't followed the lore plotline, but I have my stern reservations about whether I, as the player, am on the wrong side of history. Whilst we're here, I also have to retract a statement. You see, I can't really claim that this game has no difficulty if I'm the only person who sucks so much fucking shit that I die to Ebonrock. Also, Flamegore burnt our entire group to a crisp with over half his health remaining. It's really not a good look. To ensure victory, our raid leader gave detailed instructions on how to complete the fight.
Trying to do shit. That's not good description.
I'm not even joking, that's how he explained the mechanics of every fight in the raid. And objectively speaking, he's not wrong. Then we all hide in a corner like little soy boys so we can kill Chromagus through the wall. I've heard rumblings that this should allegedly be one of the hardest bosses in the game to date. We took him down with no sweat and minimal effort because the tanks did shit. Although I did at one point have 3 curses. Had I attained a 4th curse and turned into a massive dragon killing my entire guild, they would surely have been upset with me. God bless whoever sent me that restorative potion. Now even though this was a progress run where we skipped the first 3 bosses, it still took us a solid 3.5 hours to reach the final boss, Nefarian. It did not come as a surprise to me when we all died. This boss is so big only a third of him fits on the screen. Had we killed him with ease, I would have been disappointed. What did come as a surprise is that you need to wait a good 15 minutes to try again. Plenty of time to talk about our feelings.
Are we doing the boss now?
Nice. Let's go, guys.
Let's fucking go.
Nice. Yeah. Good job, boys. Kill the Inferno.
On this fateful day, at 11:49 p.m., as one of the only two idiots who managed to die during the fight, I was there when Prevenge first cleared Blackwing Lair, and without a shit of irony, I believe this was the exact point where I felt I had fair grounds on which to review the game. I want to give credit where credit is due. When it comes to world building and atmosphere, WoW Classic is by a large margin the best game I've ever played in my life. The soundtracks in this game are phenomenal, and I've never been this immersed in an online world. Even with outdated game mechanics and the general limitations of game design from the early 2000s, the actual experience of playing WoW holds up. Having dumped a couple hundred hours of my life on it, I can definitely see why it's praised as the granddaddy of MMORPGs. In game design philosophy, there's 4 basic player types: the socializers, explorers, achievers, and killers. The vanilla iteration of WoW manages to satiate all of their desires and combine these elements perfectly. This works in tandem with the degenerate community, from the funky chunky 40-year-old gnome players fiending for a break from their wives, to the emotionally needy female night elf e-girlfriends that are all a 50-50 coin flip between autist and femboy, to the stoner dwarves that sit around in Ironforge enchanting all day, most often falling victims to scammers late at night. To every mage I meet, all of whom I suspect to be Irish, it's the same lifestyle: drink, fight, drink, fight. To female Tauren resto druids that are 100% of the time, without a doubt, somewhat sad, lonely women in menopause. To every paladin player that either got tired of playing RuneScape, is leveling an alt, or doesn't have a keyboard. Possibly all of the above. To warlocks, who are primarily an object for us to get from one place to another, but also partially emo losers. To the human priest that, in a linear correlation with realizing he chose the worst race class combination in the game, has a questionable relationship with his ADD medication.
Go with this guy, he's such a boomer, dude. I don't want to fucking play with boomers anymore, man.
To the hunter with antisocial personality disorder who pulls everything and feigns death. By the way, all hunters are idiots. To the Eastern European warrior player who yells loudly about his big dick DPS.
So I get him out of the stealth, I charged him. Now he tries to run away because he realizes I'm alpha as fuck. I don't play games around. If you wanna fight, you're gonna fight. You're not just gonna stand there and...
To every rogue player who must have had an awful childhood. To every masochistic elemental shaman. To every feral druid who's a furry willing to play the worst class in the game just so they can yiff. To the cave dweller joyfully RPing as a human warrior with a worthy life. To the streamlined multi-boxer on 5 accounts, actively writing scripts to play the game for him so he has more time to play the game. To the first-time player who simply picked Night Elf Warrior for the meme and got thrown into all of this without any clue what the fuck I was doing. These people are World of Warcraft, and as much as the classic community and meaningful journey are absolute circle jerks at this point, I have to set aside my Dunning-Kruger syndrome and admit that everyone is right. It's fucking spot on. The community and experience of entering it constitute hands down the best video game experience I've ever had in my life. I've had a handful of games cause me so much distress that I needed to physically destroy them, but for once, I'm gonna try to be original and actually come up with a different ending. This game is a treasure, and it's been an absolute joy to play it. So for now, I'm just gonna put it on the shelf. You can literally play this game in any way you want, as long as what you want is the worst player base humanity has to offer, cringy roleplay, and outdated PvE elements. If you can look past the monotonous tedium, you'll come to find the best damn race wars of any online role-playing game on the market.